our candidates to come up to the front.
Mr. Good, please come up to the front.
Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Seminole County and Kathy Swerdlow, our president, we welcome you to the candidate debate for the position of mayor in the city of Oviedo. I am Deanna Schott, the chair of our voter services, and wanted to let you all know that this evening's debate will be live streamed on our Facebook site, League of Women Voters of Seminole County, and there it will be for the next 30 days should you want to go back and listen to what you heard tonight, or for those of you who are on Facebook Live and watching us, we welcome you as well. The League prides itself on over a century of providing nonpartisan education and advocacy through our democratic process in support of the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Florida. We do this through the political process by way of fair, unfiltered information and education for our members and for our community. This evening's debate was made possible in part by the Townhouse Restaurant, and the Oviedo Community News. This evening, I'm very proud to say that our moderator is retired Judge Fred Schott, a longtime member of the League, and more importantly, my husband for the past 34 years. Please offer a warm welcome to the judge and our wonderful candidates.
I'm going to give them a little more room. All right, Ed. Can you hear me? No.
You need to be close, so judge, you may have to.
All right. If you would stand as you're able to engage in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
All right, good evening, everybody. I will be posing questions to the candidates that actually come from you. So at each of your tables should be a note card. Feel free to submit questions. Now, a couple of ground rules for the questions. Can you hear me in the back? No. No. Okay. Can you hear me in the back now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. The questions that will be asked of the candidates this evening, to be fair, are going to be questions posed from our audience. So feel free to write out any questions that you might want to ask the candidates. You can either hand them in to Ms. Brady, who's up here, or you can raise your hand and Deanna will come and get them. Now, not all questions are going to be asked. They have to be questions that all candidates would be able to answer. They have to be questions that are relevant to the position of mayor of Oviedo. If you want to ask them how we should go about balancing the federal budget, it's not going to be asked. If you want to ask them whether we should give more aid to Ukraine, it's not going to be asked because it's not pertinent, nor do any of these three have the capability of making a decision that would actually affect that. Additionally, we want to make sure that all the questions are fair to all of the candidates. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to submit them and they will most likely be the ask of the candidates. Now, I know all of you in here are enthusiastically supporting one of these three individuals. I understand that. In order to be fair to everyone, and so that all the answers can be heard, and the questions can be heard by the candidates, I'm going to ask people not to shout out questions, not to applaud or boo any particular person or any particular answer. You are going to have the opportunity to make your feelings well known either a week from Saturday between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. during early voting, or on Election Day on November 7th between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Now, a few things while we're correcting some questions in regard to the mayor position here in Oviedo. I'm going to guess most of you live in Oviedo, right? So you probably already know all this. But for those of you that may not know this already, Oviedo's charter requires a council city manager type of government, which means the city manager is actually in charge of day-to-day administration here in the city of Oviedo. The mayor is one of 5 people on the council, and they give various guidance to the city manager, but they don't actually run the city as they do in certain cities in Central Florida and elsewhere. That is one reason why the mayor position is a part-time position. The salary for which these individuals are hoping to get next year, if they prevail in this election, has recently been raised to $18,000 a year to pay for a mayor. That might sound surprisingly low since the average salary is $50,000 or more in Florida, but it is a part-time position. Additionally, there are various benefits that they're entitled to. Bringing the full package, if you want to know all the details, feel free to ask me this. I talked to a person in charge of HR. The full package is anywhere between $37,000 with health insurance, incidentals, car allowance, things like that for an individual. And if they have their entire family, then it's up to about $41,000 or $42,000 for the entire package. The City of Oviedo mayor position is elected every 2 years, and it is a nonpartisan position. Now, we're going to start with opening statements from each of the candidates. Each of them will have 2 minutes to tell you a little about themselves and about their vision for Oviedo, as well as why they're running for this position. And in order to be ultra fair to all 3 of them and transparent, what I am going to do is I'm going to write down a number between 1 and 50 on this sheet of paper. Whoever is closest to that number gets to go first, both for the opening and the closing statement. Whoever is second closest gets to go second, and whoever is third closest gets to go third. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to write down a number that you cannot see me write. And so, we will start with Ms. Smith. What is your guess of a number between 1 and 50?
9.
9.
44.
44?
38.
Okay. The number was 12. So, Ms. Smith, you get to go first on the opening statement. Mr. Duke, you get to go second, and Mayor Sladek, you get to go third. So, Ms. Smith, a brief 2-minute opening. And by the way, for those of us that are just listening in, because this is being shown on Facebook, but you might only have audio, there are 1 minute and there are also 30-second time limits that will be held up. And once it goes to 2 minutes, I will be requesting the candidate to let the next candidate provide their response or answer. Ms. Smith, the floor is yours. Please use the microphone.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Judith Dolores Smith, and I seek to serve as the mayor of Oviedo to guard, protect, and defend the citizens of Oviedo and to continue fiscally sound policies. I grew up at a time when the following industries were part of our local economy: turpentine production, pulp, wood, logging. They used to cut pine trees for that. And at the intersection of Oviedo Boulevard and Broadway is where they loaded them on the train. Also the citrus industry and vegetable farming. We've always met the economic circumstances with various methods of innovation, such as a wonderful brand of orange called the Boss Banana. And it, exactly as it sounds, it was developed by the Boston family, if I'm not mistaken, and it has a banana flavor. And my dad had gotten several cuttings in our little orange grove, he grafted it in. Also, I look forward to applying common sense solutions as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. And opening.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good. My name is Brady Duke. I am a husband. I'm a father of 5 children, soon to be 6 children. The first few years of my life I spent right here down the road in Oviedo. My grandmother lives to this day on Curryville Road. My grandfather was the president of Oviedo back in the 80s, and so some of the earliest memories of my life are right here in Seminole County. So my mom and dad moved to Kissimmee, Florida, where and they still live in the home I grew up in there. I left home in 2006 for the Navy to fulfill a dream to be in the SEAL team. So I completed training in 2007, checked into SEAL Team 1, and started to train with SEAL Team 1 and deployed in 2009 to Afghanistan. And did another deployment with SEAL Team 1 and went to the training command after that and taught close quarters combat. Those are the skills that you use, the law enforcement officers, military uses to clear out the building. So that's the skill set that I still use today when I train law enforcement all over the country. I've trained a number of agencies here in Central Florida and across the United States. And so my family and I, my wife and 5 kids, relocated back here to Central Florida because it has always been home to me at heart. Every time we came home on leave, I would say when, or not if we're moving back, but when. And that was June of 2020. And we really felt led that Oviedo was the place to put down roots for our family here because it's near and dear to my heart. I have family all over the state. Inverness, Florida, Jacksonville, Tampa, down in Miami, Kissimmee. And so this place is where I grew up, and this is the place that I want to serve and continue to serve. I ran for Congress in last election cycle, which probably all of you know, and this is merely an extension of that service because it's a conviction I believe that God has put on my heart is to serve those around me the best way I can.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Megan Sladek, and I was born and raised in Oviedo, went to Lawton Elementary, Jackson Heights Middle, graduated from Oviedo High School, and thought I was going to leave and never return. As soon as I left, I realized that Oviedo is the greatest place ever. I went off to Notre Dame on a scholarship, and from there ended up working in Boston after graduation for MIT and the real estate investment office a little bit, and in the press office actually for 9/11. Studied a little bit in India along the way, and then ultimately ended up back in Florida at the University of Florida Law School, passed the bar, came back home as soon as I could. Fun fact about my husband, he said, "You want to get married?" I said, "Yes, but I'm going back to Oviedo, can you handle it?" And he did. He said, "Okay." So we came back here as soon as we were able to, and have been here ever since. I was first elected mayor in 2019. And but I went to my first council meeting back at least 20 years ago. So for about 12 years, I was an observer and a learner about what city government does. And throughout law school, the only thing that really interested me was land use law and environmental law. So the things I bring to the table are those things. All the background of what do cities do, how can we find ways to work within the rules to better accomplish what all of us here in Oviedo want to do in light of what the state continues to do, which is squish in on the rights that cities used to be able to operate. So I'll yield back the rest of my time.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, now, for the remainder, please save your applause and otherwise for the very end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow each candidate to have the first crack at different questions. So for this particular question, we'll start with the candidate closest to me. We'll go down the road. What are the 2 most important issues you feel you need to address if elected as mayor of the city of Oviedo? 2 most important issues.
I think the 2 most important issues that I think our city faces are, number 1, leadership and inspiration. I think it really matters who you are as a person, and if you can inspire people to follow you as you lead them in a direction. And I think that really takes a certain level of genuineness. And so the people that I talk to, the people that I meet with, that is something that I'm committed to giving to every single person that I live with and I serve, is a certain level of genuineness, because I think in leadership we should be able to trust those that we serve. And then number two, I think, the thing that I hear the most often is development. And, what are we going to do about development, and what can be done about development? And number one, I want to say I hear those requests often. I feel the same way about them. And it's my commitment to make sure that the people's voices and the residents of Oviedo are heard, so that we can do what we can to make sure that we are taking into account every single person's concerns when it comes to how heavily congested roadways are becoming because of that level of development. And so we are a growing city, and I want to emphasize growth happens over time, and it can happen by a choice, or it can happen without any really thought or concern. And so it really takes an understanding of, we've got to mature our city so that it will be productive and healthy for the long term.
Thank you. Mayor Sladek?
All right, the two biggest issues are traffic and growth. There's a lot of other tangential issues. We're always going to fund our police and fire, so we'll just leave that there. But on the traffic front, a lot of our roads are constrained, and it's not feasible for us to widen roads anymore. So what City Council has done is create a mobility plan and try to start shifting towards where funding is available. Federal funding is no longer being allocated to additional ways to move cars. So let that sink in for a little bit. We can all be sad that there's no federal funding to move cars, but I think it's more productive for us to say, okay, these are the rules. What can we do working within the rules to attract as much funding as possible to Oviedo? And the answer to that is trying to move people, whether it be by getting people out of cars for shorter trips. And about 19% of trips in Oviedo are 2 miles or less. That is the lowest hanging fruit. I rode my bike here today, guys. So you could say it's not possible to do it, but there are people who are already doing it, and I'm not the only one. And granted, this is only a 1 mile trip, but if we can get people to redirect their shorter trips, that's one traffic solution. We also have, inside Oviedo city limits, 4 different road expansions that are planned, or not as expansion so much as turn lane improvements. So we can tweak turning motions, but we don't have enough money available without hiking taxes, which I don't want to raise taxes to make roads wider. I do not mind working within the budget that we already have to improve turn movements. So we've got a turn lane coming by Walgreens on Mitchell Hammock, turning left towards UCF. We've got another turn lane, additional turn lane coming Lockwood, going into Mitchell Hammock. Another turn lane down on Lockwood going to 426. And there's also a lengthening of a turn lane on Mitchell Hammock turning into Alabama Woods Boulevard.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Thank you very much. My campaign slogan is, let's change the conversation. That's the most important thing we need to do. Why do I say that? Because in order to do what we need to do and to move forward, we have to get off of the conversation of more roads, traffic problems. Those things are in the pipeline. And maybe I have an opportunity to tell you about the roundabouts that are going to be placed on 434. Just as a side note before I continue, there's a town in Carmel, Indiana, that for 12 years ago, I believe, they started putting in roundabouts. You should go on YouTube and look at what they did and what they accomplished. I got a chance to talk with the mayor, thanks to my husband, because he wrote the mayor a letter, and I asked him, what helped you in order to move your traffic? He said roundabouts. Because the traffic doesn't stop for traffic lights. If I'm too close, let me know, I'm sorry. The traffic doesn't stop, it's continually moving. So that's one solution that we are addressing on 434. But in changing the conversation, what does that do for us? It helps us to move forward. We're stuck right now continuing to talk about the same thing. It does us no good. We are not a community like it was when I was growing up, 2,000 people. We're far from that. I was here when, we had basically orange trees, that was it. Now we are a middle-sized community that has middle-sized problems. And yes, traffic is one of them, but, am I stop? I didn't see the stop.
That was 30 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. But again, those things are being addressed. We need to change the conversation so we can move forward into the future. And I will hopefully get a chance to tell you how I see us moving forward. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sladek will be able to answer first. Not surprisingly, all of you talked about growth and how to deal with traffic concerns as well as the other growth aspects that prove to be challenges everywhere, I would think, in Florida. So somebody posed the question, if you actually want to, how do you plan to slow development in Oviedo?
All right, that is a great question. There's not a whole lot of legal ways to slow development. We can hold fast to the comprehensive plan, which I've done with an impeccable record. The only times I have voted to change it is if it would result in less traffic and less pavement than was allowed under the old comp plan. So I've only allowed changes that made less traffic and less pavement. And the other thing that we can do is we can insist that developers pay mathematically the highest impact fees that we can calculate. And that is something that I'm really hoping that my colleagues will agree to do going forward. In the past, council, I should say we, because I've not participated in impact fee setting in the past, but we're redoing a lot of ours, including a mobility fee, which is sort of a transportation knockoff. There's been some talk of, well, let's make it lower so we don't discourage development. And my take on that is, if a developer wants to come and pay their own way, great, come on over, you have the right to build, and we cannot stop you, but we darn well can make you pay your fair share. We are legally able to do that. So my plan is to do the two things that are legally possible to control the growth. And some people have suggested if the impact fees are higher, fewer people will want to develop. And I'm near a river if you don't want to develop because the cost of covering your own impact is too high. I don't care. I think it's the right thing to do for our community because nobody actively wants extra apartments or growth in general.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
I'd like to ask a question of you. And I don't know that you think this, but when did development become a dirty word? When I was living here, my grandfather came here about 1900, so I lived here when there were 2,000 residents. And each time a new house came online, that's development. When I built my house, that's development. When they build the subdivisions that you live in, that's development. So let's kind of, I think, reframe my thinking in terms of development being a dirty word. On the contrary, if we don't develop and grow, our city will die. A classic example I was talking with my husband about is when and you may know more about this than I do, but they had the route out to California, it was Route 66. And so when they put the interstate system in, what happened to the small towns on Route 66?
Good.
Okay, so again, development is not a bad word. You can manage it. I understand that you don't want to be in a crowded place. I didn't either. 2,000 people, it was all right with me then. But again, development doesn't have to be a dirty word. And again, I look to the future as to what we can accomplish now that we are what we are. Thank you.
Mr. Judith?
So I think, when it comes to those impacts need to be increased on those who want to develop here. I think it's something that is worth looking into because really once this town, because the truth is people are moving into Florida and there's no way to stop it. And there's no way to stop it, but all you can do is plan for that. And so the thing that really makes a development issue hard or feel hard to people, I think, is the congestion. And so when you look at the roadways, I think there are opportunities to make more of a grid in the city so that traffic can flow with less congestion. That way we're not going to feel those impacts. Because I think many of us enjoy having things in town here to shop at, to eat at, and to enjoy, and we don't have to drive 45 minutes for this or 45 minutes for that. But it's a matter of ensuring that the bulk of the Oviedo residents are not footing the bill for people who want to come into our town to do business in our town.
Thank you. That dovetails into the next question, as a matter of fact. When I was researching the issues for the mayor of Oviedo, one thing that came up, and I don't live in Oviedo, although I lived in Tuscaloosa at one time with Deanna and our kids, was that, and people don't really think about this unless they live here, you all are within a couple miles of the largest university in the country, population-wise and student-wise. And those people don't pay any tax money to the city of Oviedo, and lots of them use it. So how can the city work with UCF to address the impacts brought by the university and its students? Ms. Smith, would you like to go first?
I'd like to change that, not change it. Let's change the conversation using that question. I don't want to penalize them by any means. I want to incorporate them into what we're doing here. And so definitely I want to take advantage of UCF, and hopefully I'll get a chance to elaborate later on. But starting by penalizing, no, I agree you should pay your fair share, but yes, let's partner with UCF somehow, and then maybe we can develop something that works for both of us. So I view the question as kind of negative, so excuse me for changing the conversation a little bit, but I think we can do more with UCF and make it to all of our advantage. If we look at it, and I don't want to see us going to UCF and say, now you got to pay your fair share because no, how can we partner together to make this area, since it's so close to UCF, better for all of us? Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.
I think that there are and have been business incubators with UCF that could have been really an asset to the city, and I think we still could see that in the future. And so that's all about relationship building, and that's all about getting to know the people who want to do business and want to grow business. And so I think a lot of what we can do is build relationship with people that we see are going to bring a certain type of business in that isn't going to immediately impact, again, the congestion levels that we feel, but is going to bring revenue into the city at a high rate that's going to produce high-paying jobs. And for me, it's a lot of what I do and believe in is about relationship. That is really what we are doing here in this city. Is we are trying to come together and to build a city, and it takes a lot of challenging conversation. There's a lot of differing opinions, and so I think prioritizing those relationships is number one.
Thank you. Ms. Sladek.
All right, I think Oviedo dodged a bullet back in the day when the incubator went to Winter Springs, who pays, I believe it's $100,000 a year to have the incubator be there. So I'm a pretty thrifty person when it comes to budgets. I love the idea of partnering. I love the idea of figuring out if they'll give us some money, but UCF has not been eager to give us money. A lot of people don't realize this, but the golf course, everybody knows it's UCF's golf program course, right? Guess how much they pay us to use the golf course? $0. So anytime I hear people talking about let's improve the course because we're partnering and helping out UCF, my thought is, how does this help the residents of Oviedo for us to use our money to fix up a course I've never played on? And I can't access unless I pay extra money. So there's some challenges there. As for how we can get UCF money this way, I think we've already done a pretty good job by leaning into the reality that housing is the most profitable thing that the private market wants to build here. A lot of you know I dabble in real estate, not all that much, and not in commercial. But what commercial brokers have told me is that the rent you get off of a retail space is about 25% as much as the rent you get from a luxury apartment. So no person in his or her right mind would want to build anything but luxury apartments here. And it's better for us as a tax base because apartments create less traffic than commercial. This is just factually true. And they create 4 times the taxes of commercial. So 4 times the taxes and less traffic. And this is just a statistical fact.
All right, the next question is extremely specific as opposed to broad. And Mr. Duke, you can answer this one first. What is your position on the 2 issues that are on the ballot in November?
Number 1, I would say the referendum for the bond for the police station. I am in support of. I am going to check the box for yes, because I believe that number 1, we need to prioritize your public safety. I think it is paramount that we ensure that our police department has room to grow, and that, you know, we can actually make it an appealing place for people to come and work in law enforcement. Because the fact is, they have had people who have come to our police department and walk out the door because they did not like the state of our current police department. And so those men and those women put their lives on the line every single day. And I'll be completely candid with you. That is a lot of money to ask for. I am not saying it is not. But I do know that our police department, our officers are crammed in there. They are slated to need over 40,000 square feet. They're living in 19,000 square feet now. If there's room in there for a desk and a person, they've got it in there. So I encourage every single person in there, if you haven't toured that building, please tour that building. I personally am willing to pay the cost for that annually, and that's the decision every single person I think has to make. The other referendum on the ballot, I think can bring competition and can bring business into Oviedo. And I think it's, you know, this is, if you guys are not aware, it is really to give the council or the city the ability to look at certain forms of business and then give them certain tax breaks if they form a business here within the city of Oviedo. And I will be honest with you, I'm still trying to decide on how I feel about that, because I think if you want to do business here, it should be fair for everybody who comes here, but I also want to make it as easy for mom and pop shops to compete as well. So,
thank you. Ms. Sladek.
All right, on the police issue, I think the people should absolutely decide that. I am leaning softly towards yes. But the number is incredibly huge, and I get that. I am prepared to move forward no matter what voters decide, and I have in my brain already come up with many alternatives, and I'm sure many out there have heard some of the alternatives, because if it does not pass, we have to reimagine what if you don't want our police force to look like it does now, you need to vote for it. That is what I've been telling everybody, because I don't know that we can retain quality people 10 years from now if we don't have a space for them to be. The roof is leaking, and it's worth a tour, guys. On the second one, I believe I ultimately voted not to put it on the ballot, though I'm also torn on this one a little bit, because we used it very effectively to get a hospital in Oviedo. There were 3 opportunities for the hospital to go, or there are 3 possible locations for the hospital, and they could only pick 2. And Oviedo said, hey, if you come here, we'll give you a tax break. Ultimately, they got a half off tax break the first year, and then it went down to 40%, 30, 20, 10. And now they're paying full freight. The Oviedo Hospital is now our #1 taxpayer, paying about $900,000 a year indefinitely. So was it worth giving a little break to get him here in the first place? I think so. But what bugs me about it a little bit, and there'll be time for public input if anything ever does come up again, it bugs me that it's decided on a case-by-case basis instead of having a consistent policy, because I got a real big thing about wanting to treat all equally situated people equally.
So that's something educational for you. And the reason why I'm definitely for it, even though it's costing a lot of money, is because, as I stated in my opening introduction, my job as a mayor, should I be elected, is to protect and defend you. That goes above anything else. It goes above real estate, building roads, because if you are not protected and defended, you're not going to be living in a city. You're not going to be living safely. You're just not. So that is my first priority. And if the experts are saying that what we have now is not good and it will not serve us into the future, yes, we must pass that amendment, even though it's a lot of money. But I have every faith in the finance department that they will help us to lower that debt. But definitely, we need to do it right now. And it's not, right now, we need to have done it maybe yesterday, because what we're facing in the future, we're gonna need a strong police force so that your government can protect and defend you. One thing I said to someone when I was on the campaign trail, and we talked about parks, the wonderful parks we have, it's wonderful. But I said to that person, if you don't feel safe going to the parks do you no good if you're afraid to go out. And so that's why we must ensure that our citizens are safe or feel safe so that they can use all of the amenities that we have in the city. And yes, on the other amenities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question will start with Mayor Sladek. Candidates for city office should demonstrate their commitment to the community through service. Over the past 3 years, describe your volunteer efforts in Oviedo.
Well, aside from serving as mayor, which I think you got the numbers a little higher than they actually are and what the compensation package is, but I love picking up trash along the side of the road, so I've hosted a bunch of community trash pickups. Also the volunteer unpaid executive director of a group called the Oviedo Preservation Project. And we have been putting up historic signs at historical places around town and doing a little bit of fundraising. Coming up this Sunday at 6 p.m. is the Twilight Tour. So this is my hobby that predates being involved in City Council is the Oviedo Preservation Project. We're doing a tour at the Oviedo Cemetery. It is not scary. It's historically accurate tales about Oviedo's founders. So they're back to life to tell you about what life was like back whenever they were alive. And we do, because that was an all-white cemetery. We're getting into history now, and I've got to be mindful of time. We bring in people from other cemeteries to make sure that we include the full diversity of our community. I also am a permanent substitute Sunday school teacher over at Crosslight for the little kids, and involved with the American Legion. I was on the board of that last year as the historian. The Optimist Club. It's just a different. Anybody who says, "Hey, can you help out?" I try to help out. But those are my main ones.
Ms. Smith, thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll just name one that's taken up all of my time since 2018. It's taken up all of my time. And you may have noticed there's a church in Jamestown on the way to Duke Energy. And it's on the left. It's a little white church. And then one day when I was driving by after a hurricane, the roof had come off the church. Well, the church was built in 1938. And so I couldn't understand why nobody would fix the hole in the roof. And so one day I was passing by, and then I just said to myself, something said, why don't you fix it? Because it is a historical building, it's a historical church, and it was a colored school, which means dear to me when during segregation. And this is history. This is not about condemning someone. We had 6 colored schools in the area, and that was one. It was combined in the church. And so the original building, I said, somebody's got to save this building. This history serves us all. And it will serve us all. And so we got a grant from the state of Florida to renovate it. We are currently, we have our architect who's working great with us. We got our 3 contractors, quotes, and it's been a job, and I've learned so much. I believe I can construct the city now, because I got to deal with the county. They want me to rezone it because it wasn't used as a church, and so that's been my life. But also getting the history and getting memorabilia. That's another thing. We've got oral history that we UCF did for us, and so it's going to be great, a great boom to the community that you will get a chance to see it. And I give it an example of a la Colonial Williamsburg. It'll be live history. You can go and learn how to sew, learn how to do gardening, and so much. So it will be a community building. So that's my passion for the last 2018. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Ms. Kazook.
I am involved with my church. I have led a number of life groups or home groups where we gather and we read from the Word of God and we pray together. We encourage each other, and I think that's something that, number one for me personally is the primary way that I get to know the people in this community and in our neighborhoods. And I have assisted in coaching baseball for my boys' teams over the last few seasons, and I have done work with Seminole County SWAT team and just advised for them. They call me up often to get advice. Orlando PD, Brevard County SWAT team. These guys, I use the experience that I have from the SEAL teams to help give them the tools that they need to better fight against the threats that we have in our communities and to defend innocent people. And so it's a passion of mine to teach those things. And I do a lot of that just out of the goodness of my heart. And so, I think it's incredibly important that we invest in our communities and that we're willing to give our time and ourself to that. And I think that's, again, why I'm here, standing here before you, is to offer myself in service of the city, and do that in the most upright way that I possibly can, and give you all of who I am. So,
thank you. The next question will be answered first by Ms. Smith. I don't think anybody ever let us get asked this question, but it always seems to come up. What are your suggestions for the flooding and sewer issues and potholes in the road?
First of all, let me tell you that you have a marvelous public works department. They do a marvelous job with the monies that they have been given. Mr. Wyatt, Bobby Wyatt, is in charge of that department, and they are very methodical in addressing any situations, but as in anything, it's a cost. And they've done the best that they can to utilize that cost system and repair things as methodically as possible. So let me give kudos to that department. You should be glad that you have them. It's a great department. So the solution to it is more revenue. And I don't mean come out of your pockets. And I'm hoping I have a chance to address how do we get more revenue so that we have those things available so that Mr. Wyatt doesn't have to worry where he's going to get the money to repair potholes that people are calling about. But rest assured, give them the kudos that they deserve because they are doing a wonderful job with the budget. The solution isn't easy because, again, where we are living and the weather events that happened to us, it was something out of our control. So I can't say to you, okay, this magically is going to be restored. No, it's not. But you have a wonderful department who's working with what we have. And so we'll move forward and do the best that we can. I know it doesn't sound exact, but it is. I congratulate the Department of Public Works. Thank you.
Mr. Judith?
I will second what Ms. Smith said about our Public Works Department. They do a lot of hard work for our community. They do really, really excellent work. I think when I look at flooding and all of the water runoff, this is something that needs to be, I think, made a higher priority because people are losing, in many cases, their livelihood. They're losing their homes because of it. And so I think making sure that this is taking as much space in our budget just under public safety because this is something that has the potential to really create a loss of life in our community if there was a catastrophic event, and making sure that our public works guys are operating as efficiently as possible. So with my experience in the SEAL teams and working in many team environments, I've been able to get into different team environments and really see how it operates and how they do, and look for, hey, how can we make this run better? How can we raise the bar here? How can we get this job done faster, more efficient, and all of those things, because really money is always an issue, and so making sure that your tax dollars are being used as efficiently and as effectively as possible, I think takes an outside perspective to really look at how things are being done. And that's, again, not to criticize Public Works at all, because these men and women, they work very, very hard to keep our community running smoothly. So that's how I see it.
Ms. Sladek?
All right, it all boils down to money. And you touched on two different budgets. So stormwater is supposed to come out of a segregated stormwater fund. So on your water bill in Oviedo, you have a stormwater fee. The fee, we already know it's crazy low. We're in the middle of a stormwater study right now. So I hate to tell you the bad news, guys. It's too low, it's going to go up. I don't know by how much yet. We haven't even seen the preliminary numbers, but our Public Works people went in and they looked at all the ages of all the infrastructure, and y'all have no idea the science that goes into it. It's really a cool operation we've got going over there. But we've got a little sonar radar thing to determine which roads are most in need of repaving. So the money for that typically comes out of the 1 cent sales tax revenue. So that's not really our tax dollars, but if ever the 1 cent sales tax stops coming, Oviedo's going to lose about $3 million a year that is used for things like roads and to bolster our stormwater, the deficit in our stormwater gap, which hopefully we'll be able to make up a little bit more. So for the catastrophic events, there's not a whole lot we can do. We do have to unclog downstream before we can address some of the problems that are happening in Oviedo. These things are already in the works. Going back to the roads, we have already budgeted for and approved hiring an additional 4-person road crew. So that will literally double the size of people working on sidewalk issues and potholes in Oviedo.
All right, circling back around to the police department building, if the Oviedo Public Safety Building Project, which is the new police department referendum, does not pass, what is your plan B? Mr. Duke?
If it does not pass, I'm praying that it does pass, number one, because if it does not pass, I have a lot of concern for where, what reasoning people could bring into conversation when it comes to the future of the police department. And these are things that we have heard said, and I think it brings a lot of concern to the residents of Oviedo. And I think, the plan B is to come up with another plan for that, because if people don't pass this, then the question is it's not going to get any cheaper moving on from here. Okay, so this is the fact of, we are where we are because there were things not calculated appropriately back in 2016, and now we have to swallow this hard pill of where we are. And so I think this not passing personally brings concerns to the table about what could happen that I would not stand for. So as your mayor, I would never stand for dissolving a police department or anything like that. That is not an option that I would ever bring to the table to solve the needs of our city when it comes to public safety, as well as what we're seeing happen around the world and things that have penetrated our borders. There are threats that are here in our country, and we have to make sure that our residents are as prepared and as taken care of as possible.
Ms. Sladek?
Well, no matter what, Oviedo is going to have a police presence. When I was talking with the current police chief about the need, this is back probably in April maybe, or maybe March, I said, what happens if we just stay the course and we say power through this building? He said, over time, I think we will be unable to retain people. It sounds like that's what the police have shared with you as well. That people will not come, that they'll turn around, and our police force will, due to natural retirements, I haven't looked at who's going to naturally be old enough to retire or have enough seniority to retire, who will be naturally leaving. Do we have people in the ranks already who can lift up and who are willing to stay? So can the building currently work that everybody's in? Absolutely, they're still there. So somehow or another, we have to figure out how can we entice people to stay if that is what people want. And the way you do that is with money. So if we were to give everybody, let's say a $10,000 raise, say, hey, you stay, you power through this building, we'll give y'all a $10,000 raise. Well, we have to raise about $680,000. How many officers do we have now? It's got like 70, 75, worst case scenario. If we had everybody hired, I should say worst case, I guess best case, we are having a hard time getting enough people. I think we're 1 or 2 officers away from being as staffed up as we have budgeted to be, but we're not quite there yet. We did swear in another person this week, so I'm excited about that. But if we were to give everybody enough pay to entice them to stay, that would be a less expensive alternative than a $3 million a year building to carry, because that's what the debt service would be, is $3 million for 30 years. Or we could figure out how to pay people enough to accept working out of the current building.
The question was, what's Plan B? Since I'm talking with the citizens through Facebook, is there any other medium? Facebook, that's it, live? We're on
Yes,
Facebook. So I'm talking to the citizens right now, and I'm saying to you, if you have a problem with the cost of the building, come out to City Hall on the 2nd. I forgot what time, I think it's 6 or 6:30, and get your question answered as to why the building is going to cost what it costs. Get your questions answered, and then you, the citizens, will be, it's not going to be me that determines what Plan B is, it's the citizens. If you don't pass it, and our experts are saying we need this building, then you, the citizens, need to determine what you're going to do. Because I won't be a dictator. I'm not going to come in and say, well, since you didn't pass it, I'm going to... No. It lies in your laps, just as voting for the mayor lies in your laps. If you have a better solution, then you need to provide it for us. But again, educate yourself so that when you do go to the ballot box, that you're making an educated decision about your safety. It's your safety. So do that for me. I'm sorry, and I'm talking on Facebook too. Educate yourself before you go to the ballot box. Thank you.
This next question will start with Ms. Sladek. In all the other 6 cities in Seminole County, the mayor presides at city council meetings. In Oviedo, the mayor may or may not have this role. Do you think that should change? Why or why not?
I do not think it should change. I have served as chair in the past, but I like the collegiality that Longwood's situation brings to it. I don't think it helps Longwood that the chairman is also the mayor. So they change mayors in Longwood every single year. And I don't think that's a helpful way to collaborate with other groups. At this time, because Longwood switches so often, I am actually the 3rd most senior mayor in all of Seminole County, after Pat Bates, who's been there 20 years, and the mayor of Lake Mary, who's been there maybe 30 years or something. So me at 4 years, I have the most longevity, which has proven really helpful as far as interacting with different layers of government. But last cycle, I nominated somebody else to be the chairman, which by definition under our charter makes that person also deputy mayor. I think dividing up who chairs the meetings and letting people take turns with that, it gives you a different perspective of who's speaking, who's not speaking, how do you moderate fairness and make sure that there's a good discussion before the outcome. And one thing I've been really pleased with this season, like probably this is only the last year that it's happened, I've had a lot of 3-2 votes. And who the 3 and the 2 are, it's changing. There's not teams anymore. We have really good discussions, and I've had people vote on, air quote, my side that I did not anticipate, but I think that we're all really listening to each other well, and it's a good thing to not have all the power consolidated in one person.
Ms. Smith?
I think whatever the council works out amongst themselves is sufficient. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Duke?
Yeah, I think I know that the city council is no one person's vote or no one person's voice. is the authoritative, dictative voice in the room. And it takes really people who are going to step up and say, hey, I'm here to serve the people of Oviedo and work together on the city council. I think it's something that, we don't have a strong mayor position, and I'm ready to serve, and I don't presume that if I become mayor that I'm in charge of anything, but I am here merely to be someone who hears the concerns of the people and weighs those concerns with fellow council members, and then works alongside council members to ensure that we are, presiding over or keeping in account the city management. And so this is something that I have done for many, many years in very varying team environments, to be able to talk through challenging issues with people, and to be able to get real work done, regardless of minor differences in opinion or belief on issues. And so my hope is to become the mayor of Oviedo and really be a voice that inspires people to get involved in their city government process, because right now there are very, very few people that in our city who are truly engaged in this process. And so my hope is to inspire people to do that, so that we can really continue on forward in Oviedo in a way that really satisfies what I think many people want Oviedo to be for many, many years to come. So.
Thank you all. This next question will first be answered by Ms. Smith. In recent years, the Florida legislature has preempted much of the power of local government, diminishing home rule. How would you address this with our local legislators?
I think it's a problem that's bigger than all of that. I think personally, when I was on council and we visited Tallahassee, and I was talking to some people, and it appeared that the legislature was taking more power away from the cities, and I'm not pleased with that, because the closer your government is to you, the better off it is. So anytime you start taking the power away from the local government, I get nervous, because you cannot accomplish as much utilizing Tallahassee as you can utilizing your own council. So you should be nervous, yes, and contact your legislator, but maybe you have to be more vocal than that, I believe, because at where we're going now, more and more power is being taken away from us locally, and we've forgotten how important local elections are, I believe. So when that power is taken away from you, you better believe they aren't going to give it up. So maybe you need to be a little more vocal than maybe your legislator. I mean, yes, it's nice to do that. I mean, you're a representative, but you need to be aware of what's happening and say, no, I want control right here and locally. Thank you.
Mr. Duke? Absolutely. In recent years, the Florida legislature has preempted much of the power of local government, diminishing home rule. How would you address this with our local legislators?
I think we're seeing it in many, many areas in our government. This form of power coming from the top down, and that is not at all how our government was meant to be run. It is you who have the power. It is you who grant authority to your elected officials. And there are a number of other things that are hindering our ability as a city. I was just sitting with the city manager this morning, talking through this. There are a number of other areas that the state is restricting the city's ability to manage itself. And that is something that I am committed to growing more aware of through this process, because I'm not going to pretend to you today that I know every single thing in the book. I think it's absolutely imperative that you are always learning. And I think the real need in our city today, as I said before, is a leader with conviction, a leader with integrity, a leader with genuineness, to really get to the root of the issues, and someone that you can truly trust to fight on your behalf. Because I think when the state gets more and more involved in city government, your rights are going to slowly slip away. And that is something that I'm going to fight to resist every single chance I can, plain and simple.
Mayor Sladek?
My position is almost opposite of that. The United States Constitution grants the most power to the states, not the cities. It's the states. So when the states intervene and they yank back power from the cities, it's within their right under the Constitution. So just as a general rule, if I like what the state legislators are doing to deregulate cities, then I'm happy when home rule is violated. When I wish we had different rules and they go tinker with that, then I don't like then I don't like what they're doing. So it's really a case-by-case sort of a basis. One thing that I don't like that they did was this Live Local Act. It can really bungle up growth here in Oviedo. They pretty much said that you can build multifamily as long as it's got 40% affordable housing anywhere that it's zoned commercial or industrial. We have a plan for students, for people, families to live in these commercial and industrially zoned places. So that really bugs me. But when they came in a couple years ago and said, hey, cities, you can't keep somebody from working out of their house. And I thought, hallelujah, I'm glad they came and they got rid of the regulations and nullified the regulations at the local level. As a general rule, I am for less regulation. I'll lean a little bit libertarian. Of course, we have to have some guidelines, especially when it comes to keeping places, a place we want to live, growth-wise. But yeah, the home rule thing, it's a little bit hit or miss.
All right, I think everybody had a chance to answer that question. So the final question of the evening is, we did promise to end around 8 o'clock, so a little over. I'll start with you, Mr. Duke. Is somewhat been touched on before about growth, but this specific question was, with the limitations of the highly residential tax base in Oviedo, how would you raise revenue to fund the infrastructure that is needed here?
Say that again.
With the limitations of the highly residential tax base of Oviedo, how would you raise revenue to fund the infrastructure needs for the future?
I don't know if I understand the question exactly. I think it's phrased weird, but I think, it comes down to, we have to have a diverse revenue source for our city, number one. Because if it is not a diverse revenue source for the city, if we don't have diversity in that, there can be very, very challenging times when a city is really reaching its max capacity when it comes to development. So number one, I think, as I said before, ensuring that we do the impact studies to make sure that those rates are really reflecting the impacts that we're feeling here in the city. I think it's something that, because what ends up happening is, if we're too heavy in one area, in the end it all will fall on the resident of Oviedo to really bear the heaviest burden. And so, to ensure that we have a very diverse economy here is something where we have diverse businesses in scope and in size, is something that creates as much competition as possible and ensures that we have enough revenue into the city that then doesn't translate into overdevelopment in a way that burdens the city, where the millage rate has to go up to exceeding levels to then completely crush us years and years down the road. So we have to look down the road on those things.
Thank you. Mayor Sladek?
So I didn't fully understand that answer, but I want to make sure that it is clear that we are not allowed to charge impact fees from new development to cover the costs that would have accrued anyway, even if the new development came. And I got a little bit of a hint that maybe that was what was being suggested, so I just want to make sure everybody knows that's not legal under Florida law. So one of the ways that we can address a lot of the failing infrastructure that is, it's kind of on the clock. In Alabama Woods, a lot of the stormwater infrastructure, it got blown out by Ian. It was already at the end of its lifespan. That wiped out the last 5 years. And that's why we're doing the stormwater rate study. We're also in the midst of water and sewer, all of them. And we have not in the past collected enough to be ready to save up and buy the new thing when it was ready. So there's going to be some decisions to be made on how we want to approach budgeting going forward. So if we really bite the bullet and we pay off the debt, because right now, as Oviedo has been run to date, we always borrow whenever we have an emergency. We never save up. So we have an opportunity through these rates to tweak the rate to a spot where we can start saving up, so when the next purchase comes, we will have saved up, maybe not 100%, but something, so that when we go to borrow, we're borrowing less, and over a few life cycles of equipment, we may be able to ultimately get out of debt, which I hope we can do, because we've knocked out 24% of Oviedo's debt since I was elected, and I really hope to see us go that way. And really the path to do that is to have these enterprise funds that are standalone fee-based funds, to have them operate like a real business that's, it's a break-even business. We're not making any money off of it.
Ms. Smith?
I alluded to the situation we're in my introduction. Oviedo was considered a bedroom community. When I grew up, we had many varied industries. And what happened when the citrus catastrophically failed, that was our main industry. And what did we have? We had land. And what don't you want to have? You don't want to have empty land. Why don't you want to have empty land? Because they tax you as though it's going to be, a mall is going to be next door. And I'm using that facetiously, but I went through something like that. And so we had a very financial base. What we don't have is a varied financial income stream. A lot of our monies comes from single-family homes. For an example, and I don't know all of it about Altamont. I heard they're debt-free. Why? Because they have a large commercial base, and they can draw from that. And so we don't have that. So part of why I chose let's change the conversation, if we don't start changing the conversation now and have conversations about how we can vary our income stream, how can we get more high-paying businesses? And you can. Don't tell me you can't. I know we're running out of land, but don't tell me you can't, because we better do it. And one of the things when I was on council, I got consensus from council. When I found out that the simulation industry, $6 billion that's right next door, and I asked questions. I said, well, why don't we have it here in our city since it's right next door? And some of the answers I got was, well, we don't have enough land, we don't have the, how do you know? How do you know that there isn't a simulation business that maybe wants just to have an office building here and maybe can go elsewhere to get manufacturing space? So we had better do that. That was what I tried to do. I was trying to make a partnership with the simulation industry at 6. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have closing statements from each of the candidates, again in the order in which they get this debate. So Ms. Smith, you have 3 minutes to present a closing statement of why you should become Oviedo's next mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening to me. I love to talk about this city that I grew up in, that my grandfather came to it about 1900, and the lovely history that's behind it, and why people came here and how they thrived. But thank you so much for listening. Also on Facebook. But I wrote out my statement so that I don't forget anything. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you about my desire to serve as your mayor. On this date, October 25th, 48 years ago at 11:30 a.m., I made a commitment to love, honor, protect, and keep a young man named John Richard Everett Jones. I made the contract with him through rose-colored glasses. I did not imagine the various things that would come our way. On October 22nd, 2016, during the 26th year of his Ironman distance participation in the Great Floridian in Claremont, Florida, John suffered a catastrophic spinal cord injury, which resulted in the surgeon telling me that he would never walk again. I made an appeal to the creator of the universe. John could only speak. He could not feed himself, nor could he walk. He began to walk miraculously after suffering a saddle blood clot from which Dr. Max said that he would die from if he operated. We have not sat on the sidelines of life waiting to die. On the contrary, John continues to work, and he has encouraged me in my pursuits to be of service to this community that my maternal grandfather arrived in around 1900. I honor my commitments, and I pledge to you, should you elect me as your mayor, I will guard, I will protect, and I will defend you. Thank you.
Leadership, a lot about making commitments and honoring those commitments to serve, and I think it is something that can bring a lot of value to the leadership of this town. I value our first responders extremely because I know what the men and women of our town do. I value honesty and integrity, and it's something that I commit, as I said a couple times already tonight, to you guys here today. You know, I think some of the greatest leaders that I know and have seen are those who don't pretend that they know everything, or the ones who have all of the answers for everyone around them, but are the leaders who really lean on the strengths of those that are on their team, those that are in their community, and really help those people thrive. And that's my commitment, is to work on the city council, to really create a state of thriving for our city council, for our city management, and for the departments of our city, because I appreciate every single one of them. And so, you know, it's not about what a mayor says per se, but what a mayor does. And I'm committing to listen to each and every one of your concerns and take those into account as it comes to making decisions, because you're really looking to hire and elect somebody who is a trusted decision maker for you. Somebody with a shared vision, a shared conviction, and somebody that you know that you can trust and that has your back. And so that is something that I'm offering to you. And you know, I have nothing to gain here. I'm not the city's attorney, I'm not the city's realtor, I'm not the city's developer. I'm just a true servant. The only property I own in this city is where my house is. And so I am here for you guys, and that's really it. So thank you guys very much.
The last 4 years, I think, have been the most interactive I have seen our city be. We have had some crazy ideas thrown out by residents, by council members, by me, and we just get everything out there and had some solid discussion. One thing that I'm really pleased about is the level of collaboration that our current city council has. We don't all hang out as buddies behind the scenes, and that's not necessary. What we need is people who are able to go out into the community and not scare anybody and be approachable. I think proof that I am such a person is that people run against me every time. Nobody fears retaliation. Nobody's like, man, what's Megan gonna do if I run against her and things don't turn out the right way? Nobody is worried, and the developers are not worried. They've got, they're backing somebody else. If you go look at where all the signs are, they don't worry because they know that I will apply the same law to each person in that situation equally. So there's no reason to have anybody worry about sharing any wacky ideas, whether it be let's get rid of the debt, which would be a really hard slog, but I hope that you guys are excited about it. I think in this crowd you might be. Or whether it's let's push a little faster to get more people off the road. That's another heavy lift because a lot of people just don't want to get out of their cars. But unless we talk about these things, unless we keep staying creative and keep the ideas flowing, there's no chance of anything changing. People didn't end up with light bulbs because we got the candle better and better and better. Somebody just came up with a totally new thing. And that really is what I'm hoping that we can find here in Oviedo, is just keep talking so much to so many people that ultimately one of these little nuggets grows wings and gets us a solution that we never even imagined possible. And then we do have a great staff. We can figure it all out, but we need a few visionaries, all y'all out here, and some people willing to say uncomfortable, true things, which that seems to be my lot in life, saying the things out loud that other people are not willing to say. But we need to say those things out loud and figure out how to move together.
All right, well, I'd like to especially thank our sponsors, first of which is the Townhouse Restaurant, which provided this venue and the amazing food here. I actually spoke with Deanna today that maybe we should move back out this way towards Oviedo so we could be closer to the Townhouse Restaurant, because it really is exceptional food and an exceptional staff. I'd also like to thank very much the Oviedo Community News for covering this important event. And for covering the issues important to the residents of Winter Springs and Oviedo. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Seminole County, thank you candidates for sharing your ideas and your thoughts with us here this evening. And thank all of you who came out or checked in on Facebook for attending this evening. Have a nice rest of your week. Good night. And don't forget to vote.